The elders of Iliayo tell a tale that is not to be spoken lightly, a tale whispered in hushed voices when the wind howls through the streets at night. It is a tale of a drum, not just any drum, but one carved from the heartwood of a tree that should never have been touched. Its skin was not taken from an animal known to men, but from the beast whose name have been erased from existence. They say that this drum, when played, does not summon warriors. It does not call for rain, nor does it tell stories of heroes. Instead, it calls the dead. And death, once called, does not come alone. This is the story of Oba Aderemi, the king who sought power beyond his understanding and paid the price. This is a story of the drum of death. Before Aderemi became Oba of Iliayo, he was the second son of Oba Olujimi. His older brother, Adekunle, was everything a future king should be: strong, just, wise. The people loved him. They whispered that he carried the spirit of Shango, the god of thunder, and that under his reign, Iliayo would flourish. Aderemi was different. From childhood, he had been obsessed with power. Not the kind that made a man loved, but the kind that made a man feared. While Adekunle learned to lead with kindness, Aderemi studied the secret of the Babalawos, the diviners who knew the ways of the spirits and shadows. Why seek the favor of the gods when men can bow to you out of fear? He once asked the priest. The priest had only shaken his head. A king who rules with fear does not rule for long. But Aderemi did not listen. One night, the palace woke up to screams, and Adekunle, the rightful heir, was found dead in his chambers. His body was cold, his face twisted in an expression of pure horror. There were no wounds, no signs of poison. It was as if something unseen had taken his soul. The people mourned. The kingdom wept. Aderemi did not. Months later, Oba Olujimi was also found dead in his chambers. His face looked peaceful. The people said he must have died in his sleep, out of sorrow. 2 weeks after Oba Olujimi's passing, Aderemi was crowned Oba of Iliayo. But ruling a kingdom was not enough. He wanted more. On the night of a full moon, after Aderemi's coronation, a blind old man arrived at the palace gates. His hair was long and grey, his skin wrinkled like ancient parchment. His eyes, though lifeless, had secrets. He did not bow. "I bring a warning," he said. The guards wanted to send him away, but Aderemi was curious. He ordered the man to be brought before him. The blind man stood in the great hall, surrounded by warriors and priests, and spoke of a drum hidden deep in the Odo forest. A drum that was never meant for men, he said. A drum that ended a kingdom long before yours. It must remain buried. Aderemi leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of drum?" he asked. The old man's lips trembled. For a moment, there was silence. Then Aderemi laughed. "If it calls the dead, then it shall call them to serve me." The blind man's face darkened. "You do not understand. The dead do not serve. They only take." Aderemi was no longer amused. That night, the blind man was found dead in the palace courtyard. His mouth was open, as if he had been screaming. His body was cold, too cold for a man who had only just died. The next morning, Aderemi gathered the finest warriors and priests. With torches and machetes, they set out for Odo Forest. Odo Forest was older than Ilayo itself. It was a place where the wind never truly settled. A place where the air always smelled of wet earth and old bones. It was said that those who wandered too deep would hear voices calling their names. Voices that did not belong to the living. Aderemi's men were strong. Warriors who had faced lions and raiders. But even they hesitated at the forest's edge. "You should not go further," one of the older warriors muttered. Aderemi turned to him, his eyes dark. "Then stay behind and tell the world you were afraid." The warrior said nothing more. They entered the forest. At first, it was merely strange. The trees, too tall, the shadows too long. But as they pressed deeper, the world around them began to change. The ground felt softer, as if it were breathing. The trees twisted, their branches resembling outstretched hands. The air was thick, filled with whispers that seemed to come from beneath the earth itself. On the third night, Adegbemi, one of Aderemi's warriors, vanished. At dawn, they found him. He was standing in the trees, his eyes wide, his body unnaturally still. When Aderemi called his name, Adegbemi opened his mouth, but what came out was not his voice. It was the sound of a drum beat. Then he was gone, vanished into the darkness. The warriors clutched their weapons, but Aderemi only smiled. "We are close." And indeed, by midday, they found the shrine. The shrine was ancient, overgrown with vines. Carvings covered the stone walls, depicting figures without faces, kneeling before a drum. The symbols were unfamiliar, yet Aderemi understood them. At the center of the shrine sat the drum. It was small, yet terrible to behold. The wood was unnaturally smooth, untouched by time. The skin of the drum shifted, as if something beneath it was still alive. One of the priests trembled. "Oba, we should not..." But before he could say more, Aderemi struck the drum. The world screamed. The wind howled through the shrine, blowing out torches. The earth shook. The trees outside moaned. Then the shadows. They came, figures with hollow eyes, warriors with rusted swords, women and children whose mouths did not move, yet they still screamed. The forgotten, the dead. Aderemi's warriors fell to their knees, but the Oba only smiled. "You will serve me," he said. The spirits laughed. The shrine trembled. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent beyond decay. Something older, more unnatural. The warriors who had followed Aderemi into the forest were no longer standing tall. Their hands trembled around their weapons. The bravest among them, men who had killed without fear, now clutched their chests, as if something unseen was wrapping its fingers around their hearts. And then they saw them. From the shadows, they emerged, a mass of figures stepping forward in slow, deliberate movements. Men and women, children and warriors, kings and slaves. Their skin was grey, their eyes hollow, their lips moved soundlessly, as if whispering secrets only the dead could know. Some were half-formed, shifting between flesh and smoke, while others had no faces at all. The warriors of Ilayo fell back in terror. "Ogun, save us," one of them whispered. But there was no saving them now. Oba Aderemi did not step back. He did not flinch. Instead, he smiled. "You will serve me now," he said. His voice was calm, steady, and the spirits stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the laughter began. Not laughter like men laughing at a joke. Not laughter like children playing. This was laughter that did not belong to this world. It echoed from the ground, from the trees, from the very sky above them. Aderemi's warriors screamed. One by one, their bodies collapsed. Their bodies going limp, their eyes rolling back. They did not fall like men dying, but as if something had stolen their souls before their bodies even had a chance to understand what had happened. The spirits stepped closer. Aderemi felt it then, a sensation crawling up his spine, cold fingers pressing into his skin. His breath hitched. His hands trembled for the first time. "You do not command us," a voice whispered. It did not come from any of the spirits in front of him. It came from everywhere at once. "You called us, and now we are free." Aderemi's smile faltered. For the first time in his life, fear crept into his bones. At dawn, Aderemi and his warriors emerged from Odo Forest. But he did not come out alone. Behind him, the warriors who had followed him into the forest walked in perfect silence. Their eyes were empty. Their bodies moved as if something else was controlling them. They did not blink. They did not breathe. They were not the same men who had entered the forest. And behind them, in the shadows, more followed. The dead. They walked without footsteps. Their bodies faded in and out of existence, flickering between the world of the living and the realm beyond. The people of Ilayo watched from their homes, their hearts pounding. Mothers clutched their children. Elders whispered prayers. The warriors did not speak. Aderemi walked to the palace, climbed the steps to his throne, and sat down. Only then did he speak. "Kneel," he commanded. And every single person in Ilayo dropped to their knees. They did not know why. They did not understand what force had compelled them. But none could resist. The drum beat still echoed in their ears. Days passed, then weeks. The people of Ilayo continued their lives as if nothing had changed. And yet, everything had changed. The warriors no longer spoke. The priests stopped offering sacrifices. The children no longer played in the streets. At night, the wind carried whispers, not human whispers, But something else. The people could not see them, but they felt them. The spirit that had followed Aderemi back never left. Then the disappearances began. First, the servants, those who tended to the palace halls, vanished without a trace. Their beds untouched, their belongings left behind. The people whispered among themselves, but no one dared speak too loudly, because those who did were never seen again. Aderemi sat on his throne, watching, waiting. His body grew paler each day, his voice softer, as if he was no longer fully part of this world. Yet he was not afraid. He had done what no king before him had done. He had conquered death. Then, on the 8th night, a man arrived. His name was Aderemi, an Ifa priest, a seer who had spent years studying the old ways. He had heard about the whispers, felt the disturbances in the spirit world, and he knew what had happened. He walked through Ilayo without fear. The people, though terrified, watched him with hope, a hope they did not dare speak aloud. Aderemi entered the palace. There he found Aderemi, sitting on his throne. The king of Ilayo no longer looked human. His skin was darkened, as if shadows had begun to consume him. His eyes hollow, yet filled with strange, unnatural glow. The drum sat beside him. "You have made a mistake, Oba," Aderemi said. Aderemi did not move. "You think you rule the dead, but you were never meant to play that drum." Oba Aderemi tilted his head. "And who will stop me? You?" Aderemi did not answer. Instead, he lifted a small pouch and blew its content into the air. It was Oro powder, a sacred mixture meant to break dark magic. The moment it touched the ground, the palace shook. A howl erupted from nowhere, a scream so piercing it shattered the windows, and then the shadows began to unravel. The dead screamed. Aderemi's expression finally changed. For the first time, he looked afraid. The moment Aderemi released the oral powder, the palace itself seemed to groan. Aderemi's body jerked, his fingers twitching as if something inside him was fighting to break free. The shadows that clung to him like second skin shuddered, recoiling from the sacred powder. The drum beside him trembled, its surface rippling like disturbed water. Then the spirit screamed. It was not a cry of pain, no. It was something worse. It was the sound of rage, of something that had been cheated, something that had tasted freedom and refused to return to the darkness. The warriors who had followed Aderemi back from Odo Forest began to convulse. Their bodies, which had moved with unnatural stillness, began to jerk violently. Their hollow eyes rolled back, their mouths gaping open, yet no breath escaped them. Aderemi's face contorted. No! His voice was not his own. It was layered, distorted, like 1,000 voices speaking at once. The spirits that had followed him, the ones who had whispered to him in the night, were inside him now, and they were fighting to keep him. Aderemi stepped forward. "You were never their master," he said. "You were only their vessel. Aderemi let out a choking sound, his fingers clutching at his throat as if something unseen was tightening around it. His body convulsed, his chest rising and falling in uneven, unnatural movements. The drum shook violently, the sacred markings on its surface fading, as if the spirits within it were trying to break free. The air grew thick, heavy with a darkness that felt alive. The people of Ilayo gathered outside the palace, watched in horrified silence. For the first time since his return from Odo Forest, their Oba looked mortal. And for the first time, he looked afraid. The ground cracked, and from below, hands emerged. Not human hands, not spirits. Something else. Long, twisted fingers shifting and flickering between flesh and shadow. The people ran, but there was nowhere to go. The hands reached out, grabbing, pulling. One by one, they were swallowed. The entire kingdom of Ilayo fell. Their voices faded, their bodies vanished. The city was gone. And standing on the last stone, watching the world collapse around him, was Aderemi's possessed body. The thing inside him laughed softly. A kingdom lost to time, it whispered. A story no one will remember. And then it too disappeared. And with that, Ilayo was erased from history. And centuries later, travelers would pass through what should have been the site of Ilayo, but there was nothing there. No ruins, no bones, no sign that there was ever a kingdom there. No sign that it ever existed. Only an empty stretch of land where the air felt wrong, where the wind carried whispers that should not exist. And sometimes, on the darkest nights, a distant hollow sound could be heard. The drum beat still echoed, waiting for the next fool to listen. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment below. Let me know what you think about the story. And do not forget, like and subscribe and share to others as well. Bye.